Hello, hello. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Paco, and I'm here with my good friend Manon. Manon, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having
Great.
me here.
Yes, Manon is actually a returning guest on Adobe Live. I know you've been live on Adobe Live France or in the UK.
Yeah.
So,
In France,
in
last year.
France.
Yeah.
Excellent. So no stranger to these productions. So we're gonna get into the work real quick, but as always, just want to give out some quick housekeeping items. We are live on YouTube and Behance. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please put them in the chat. I am looking at it right now. I see we got Cody, we got Robert, we got Ray. Thank you all for joining us. We got Diane on the YouTube front. So again, I'm gonna be looking at these chats. This is Manon's show, so I'm going to kick it back to her. And we're going to be creating an illustrative water animation. Is that kind of what we're going to be doing today?
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent, cool. And then I
Uh,
see that you have some of your work up right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and flip over to your
yeah.
screen. And yeah, why don't you give us a quick intro, Manon?
Okay, so my name is Manon Louart. I'm an illustrator and motion designer based in France. I've worked for clients like Converse, Adidas, Instagram, and I specialize in animated illustrations for social and digital media. And I also teach motion design over on Skillshare, so maybe I can show you that. So yeah, if you ever want to learn motion design from me, I have the link in my Instagram bio.
Amazing. Yeah, and please feel free to check out this Skillshare option. As we see some of your work, it's absolutely beautiful. It's very much
Thank you.
has a look. So we can pretty much tell that this is by an artist who has a distinguished look. I think it's this beautiful blend of retro animation with these beautiful color, like nostalgic film color palette. It's very cool
Yeah.
work. I love it. We were just chatting about it before we went live.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we were chatting about our love of The Lord of the Rings,
That's
actually.
right. Yes. So let's see if it pops up. But this was kind of playing
Uh,
on repeat as we were queuing up to
yeah,
go live, and then there's a
right
sword
here.
animation, and there it is. And I was like, that kind of looks like Enduro, and she's like, it is. I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we're both like, we love the movies. I love the movies. If you know me well enough, you know I'm a Lord of the Rings nerd when it comes to those movies. So yeah, that was fun. Very cool stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So what are
Um,
we working on today?
okay, so I'm gonna take you back to this. So I posted this over the summer on Instagram, and a lot of people were asking for a tutorial for the water right here. So I figured it would be a great time to show you how I animate my water, I guess. So I've prepared this animation. So everything is already pretty much animated. So we have this nice little volcano, like a house that's on fire, some lightning, and there is just this section with the water that's left to animate. So that's what we're going to do today, if everything works out, I hope.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and just to let everybody know, we got about an hour to work. It's probably closer to 55 minutes, so we'll try and get as much done as possible. But we're all here to learn, so even if we don't finish, you're here for the journey and kind of learning on how this all works behind the
Yes.
scenes. So, yeah, I'm
Okay.
excited. Let's get
All right.
cracking.
So, I've gone through quite a lot of YouTube tutorials for water, and none of them just like matched with the vibe I wanted to go for. Um, usually people use like some fractal noise. So right here, I'm using like an extension from FX console. I think that's how it's called in English. It's just something that allows you to get your effects quicker.
Very
So
cool. So
people use
that's an extension you installed, or did it come with the After Effects?
no, it's an extension. It's free.
Very cool.
So
Nice.
if people want to check it out, it's completely free. So what people usually do for water is use some fractal noise and set it to like strings and spline and like raise the contrast a bunch like this and maybe scale it down a bit. And then they usually animate the evolution. And then it looks like this. And I like it, but as someone who uses After Effects a bunch, I feel like it's fractal noise, right?
Yeah, and I feel like fractal noise has so many use cases, right? I've seen it people use it for like
Absolutely.
displacement maps. And
I
it's
love
funny how
it.
this one little weird effect, when you look at it, they're like, how can I even use it? It's got so many use cases. But yeah, once you know it's fractal noise, you know it's fractal
Yeah, you
noise.
kind of
Yeah.
know.
Hmm.
Even though it's my favorite effect of all, you can definitely tell. Um, so I went back to the series of lives I did with Adobe France. Maybe I can show you some of them on Instagram. So the concept for the episodes was that people from the public, viewers, would send me some obscure and old After Effects effects, and then I would try to make something out of them. So it led me to explore like a lot of very weird effects. So for this one, we have CC ball action and shatter, which is an effect that like makes these kind of old looking transitions. Like there is a brick wall that explodes.
This is so
But
cool.
that,
I love that.
yeah, that was really fun. Oh, and there is CC hair in there somewhere, and it's honestly kind of gross looking at first,
I
but it
imagine.
turned out pretty good, right? So,
Yeah.
so I went back to those and I was trying to find something that I hadn't used yet. And I found CC bubbles. So that's what we're going to use to make the water. That's going to be the base for it.
Excellent. Cool. Before we
Yeah,
get into it, I'm seeing some questions roll up that I want to give some love to the
absolutely.
chat. So Carolina's asking, did you teach yourself motion design?
I studied graphic design, and I think over the course of 3 years, I maybe had two motion design courses. So I definitely watched a lot of YouTube tutorials, and then I just kind of learned on the go when I was starting to work as a freelancer. So yeah.
Yeah, it's we live in the age where I think you can teach yourself a lot of things these days, especially
Mhm.
with YouTube. We jokingly call it YouTube University. So yeah, it's a lot of the people we've had on Adobe Live and that I've hosted, a lot of them are self-taught. Believe it or not, obviously it helps to have designs just kind of get a head start or even get a mentorship, which can be very valuable. But yeah, it's very cool to know you did a mixture of both.
Yeah. And I think
Cool.
everyone can do it. It's just
Yeah.
like I feel like people want to learn everything all at once, but for me, it was over the course of maybe 10 years. So
Right.
slowly but surely, you'll get there.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a great way to approach it is, maybe don't try and learn everything all at once. It's honestly, I feel
Mhm.
overwhelming. So maybe you start by trying to replicate a cool effect that you saw, or maybe even trying to replicate some of this artwork that you see.
Yeah,
And then from there, you kind of start chipping away at this giant, block where you start sculpting your skills and where you kind of want to lean into.
yeah,
Is it more designy? Is it more motion graphics? So yeah, very cool things. And I see one more question. Will this live
absolutely.
stream be available to watch after today? Yes, it will. This is going to live in our YouTube channel, which is Adobe Live. So we have a little graphic here. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're live every single week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we have a bunch of short form series that we upload every Mondays and Fridays. So lots of content on Adobe Live. Make sure you subscribe so you're not missing out. All right. Anyways, back to you, Manon.
Okay, so I went into my pen composition. So right now I just have like a reference layer of what I want the water to sort of look like. It's just a Photoshop layer. Um, and I've already prepared a pre-composition for the water. So right now it's just a black solid, and it's quite a bit larger than the composition because I've used a corner pin effect to recreate the perspective. So we're going to animate the water as viewed from a top view, but then with the corner pin effect, you can displace the corners of the layer. And I've used that to simulate kind of a perspective that matches the scene, right? Does it make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Very cool.
Okay, so this is my composition. I'm gonna go ahead and add a CC bubbles effect. Excuse me. So I've changed the shading type to lighten. So these are going to be the base for the movement of the water. So CC bubble, it's a pretty simple effect. It's just a bunch of bubbles going up. You have no option for the direction or like it's very, very simple. You
Okay. So
can
that's the
change the
effect
amount.
on its own, right? So when you play it, this is without
Absolutely.
touching any of the parameters. Got it.
Yeah. So you can change the amount, the speed, the wobble, and the bubble size, and that's pretty much it. But it works pretty well. So I'm going to change the amount to maybe 500 and the size, I don't know, 15, something like this. I wanted to cover the screen, right? Then I usually slow down everything in After Effects. I really like slow and peaceful animations. So let's go with 0.4. I want them to move around a bit more. So I'll raise the frequency and maybe like this. So it's a bit harder to load right now because there are a lot more bubbles, but it looks like this. So it's a pretty slow movement, and it's covering the screen quite a bit. So that's the base. And because there aren't a lot of parameters, and I want some smaller ones, I'm going to duplicate that layer and I'm going to make some smaller ones. So let's say 7 for the size. And I think for the speed, it would make sense that they would be a bit faster because they're smaller.
Right.
Sometimes I explain things and I'm just like, I think that that's right, but I'm not sure, but I feel like this
Yeah.
would be
No, that
right.
feels right. I feel like bigger bubbles kind of just waft around slowly, and little
Yeah,
ones just kind of zoom up. So this seems about
exactly.
right.
Yeah. So yeah, now it looks like this. And so that's the base. And I only want to keep the outer edge of the bubbles to create my nice little circles for the water. If I bring back my animation right here, uh, I just want something smaller like this, right?
Okay, and we're looking
Um,
at right. We're looking at the top left one. That's what we're trying to recreate.
yes.
Got it.
So what I'll use for that is an effect called extract. So for those who don't know, it's an effect that allows you to, correct me if I'm wrong, key out a certain range of blacks and whites on your layer, right?
Yeah, it
I
sounds
think
about
that's
right.
it.
It's you're kind of messing with the in and out points to yeah, key out. And
Yeah.
there's many ways to do it. I actually haven't seen it with this effect called extract, so you'll be teaching me something here. Um,
Yay.
but yeah, it's doing a pretty good job. That's very cool.
Yeah. So I'll just raise this to, yeah, around here. So if I go back to the black, now I have those outer edge.
Oh, check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And uh, I'm using two different versions of that effects instead of just using one on an adjustment layer on top because the bubbles are a different size. So if I just use the same value for the black point on the smaller bubbles, the ring is going to be a lot skinnier. So I need to adjust it down a bit, like this, maybe. So now it's pretty proportional, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our bubbles. And the last thing I want to do is how can I explain that? I feel like if those circles were on the same plane, you wouldn't be able to see kind of the bigger bubbles showing through that ring. It would just be one
Oh, I see what you mean. So kind
uniform
of like
mass.
right, yeah. So kind of like the final composition, they're grouped next to each other. They're not really on top of
Yeah,
each other. Yeah, so we don't want
exactly.
them living on top of each other. They're just this one
Yeah,
like one-dimensional layer where they all lived grouped together.
exactly. So what I'm going to do for that is duplicate my top bubbles. Oh my God, I did not rename my layers. That's a crime.
Oh, so you let you name your layers. That's always a thing on Adobe Live. People, if you're
Absolutely.
like either team name your layers, team it doesn't matter. It can be a
I,
controversial one. Obviously, it's all in good fun, but it's funny to see who stays organized and who just wants to get cracking at it and not worry about that.
I'm a team. I'm afraid that Ben Marriott will come and get me if I don't.
Yeah, that's funny. And I think once when you get to complicated motion graphics and you have dozens of layers, I think at that point you might really want to start naming layers. Otherwise it's just like
Absolutely.
layer 1 through 12, and you're like, what does layer 73 do?
Exactly. So what I want to do is use my smaller bubbles as a track mat for the bigger ones so that they
Hmm.
don't show through. So I'm going to remove the extract effect on the copy I've created that is now named.
So
And
speaking
I'm
on the name, we had a couple people in the chat saying, "I'm telling Ben Marriott Manon." It's like Ben would be so
exactly.
disappointed. That's so funny. They know. But you named him, so
Shame
you are
on me.
vindicated. It's all good.
All good. Whew. Okay,
Crisis
so I've
averted.
used
Whew.
it as an inverted mat. So now it's just like one big mass. So it's more cohesive, I guess. Okay. So that's the base. And now we want to add some distortion to create something that's more organic and looks like water, basically. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer and name it.
Name it. Don't forget to name it.
No. So I've named it and I'm going to add some turbulent displace. That's my second favorite effect. Uh, it's an effect that distorts your layer based on, I think it's a fractal noise field, maybe, I think. Um, And I'm just going to animate an evolution cycle. So I just add a keyframe at the start and one at the end. Um, One thing you need to know about the way I animate is that I use as little keyframes as possible. I just like set up the parameters in the effects and just let it do its thing.
That's good. I mean,
So
less is more, you
yeah,
know? I mean, that's
absolutely.
actually really good to know. I didn't know about that in your style. I figured there'd be all sorts of complicated keyframes, but
No,
it's cool that you can get the
no.
look and the effects that you do with minimal keyframes. Very cool to know.
I'm a expression and effects person. That's it.
Ah, expressions. Daunting, but once you
Yes,
get a hold of them, then they can't really ever go back to not using them.
exactly. So that's my turbulent displace. I usually use it as a pair. So I make one version of the effect and then I make a copy just to give it more detail, I guess. So I'll just lower the amount and the size, and I usually raise the complexity as well, just to get some more details. So that that's the difference. And I usually change the random seed in the evolution options, just so that the distortion is more separated, I guess. it's different, more different in between the two versions. So that's what it looks like now.
Nice. It's done a lot. Kind of looks. Do you know what Funyuns are? Do they sell those in France?
No, but I see
It's
what
like
you mean.
it's like American snacks that look like this. Maybe these are a little more warped. They're kind of more circular, but looks like just
Yeah,
floating, squishy Funyuns floating. But I
perfect.
see how it's all coming together. All these little effects and adjustments are kind of getting us closer and closer to that final look.
Yes. Um, so now I'm going to pre-compose everything uh, and name it something like water base or Funyuns. If you want to, you can.
Floating Funyuns.
And at this stage, you could actually just add like a fill effect and pretty much just call it a day. If you want to go for something that's like sharp and stylized, I guess this could work as is. But I like to go one step further, and I'm going to add an effect called CC Glass. So that's one I've used during the lives on the French side, and it was really fun to use. So I think the name speaks for itself. It just sort of distorts your layer to make it look more like glass, and it's based on a bump map. So you can use the layer itself as a bump map, but you could also use like a separate layer, maybe with some fractal noise. Uh, if I raise the contrast on this and use it as the bump map, it's going to get distorted following the difference in lightness
I see. Yep.
on the fractal noise.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to use the layer itself as the bump map. And okay, so when I used the extract effect right here, I left out, it might be very faint on the live, but I did leave out some of the gray. So it's not just like a flat white surface. And it's that subtle difference in lightness that's going to make the CC glass effect work and creates some distortion. So that's the
I
bump map
see.
we're going to use.
So
Yeah,
you left some of the gray. It wasn't necessarily all black, all white. You did leave some of that gray in because it's gonna help CC glass interpret, I guess, the radiant or the gradient on it. It's gonna make it work a little
exactly.
bit better. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. CC glass is doing a lot to this composition. I feel like this is what's really making it look more watery.
it is. It's
And it's
the
funny. It's
secret
CC glass.
ingredient.
Yeah, that's I love these compositions and seeing behind the scenes because you would never expect to put CC glass on something like this, but it's combining all these different ingredients that make this final result. You're like, oh, I didn't know it was CC glass that made this like really sell this water effect.
Yeah. And I mean, I use it one way, but there are so many ways to use it. Like if you go this way with the displacement, it starts looking
Oh,
like a 3D surface
yeah,
almost. So that's pretty fun too. What I usually do is raise the softness a bit, and I go in the other direction with the displacement. So, like in the negatives, like this, because in the negatives it makes it skinnier, and skinny is what we want, right?
yep,
That's what's going to give us that look
right, mm-hmm,
on the water, like this.
yeah,
So. I crank it pretty much all the way. um, and yeah, that's pretty much what makes everything work, honestly, because it makes the rings skinnier, but it also creates those like kind of reflections in between the circles. And yeah, it was completely accidental on my part to stumble on this, but I think it works pretty well.
How was this accidental? Did you just, how would you even know that CC Glass gives this? And I see Milo agrees on the chat too. They said CC Glass instantly gave it that liquid look. I was like, yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm so curious to know how you figured out CC Glass was the key ingredient.
I uh I don't know. Honestly, I was just trying to add some distortion at first, and I
Mm-hmm.
remembered one way I used it, and I was like, maybe this could like add some reflection, and I just played around with the parameters, and I added some colors back in the base on the circles, and then at one point it just clicked, and I saved the project so fast
Yeah, yeah,
because
quick
yeah.
save. Yeah.
So
That's so
yeah,
cool. This
that's the
looks
water.
so yeah, this looks very, very good. And it's all with we didn't have to leave After Effects or take it to another app or get these plugins. It's just these, funky effects in After Effects that I would argue is like, when would I use this? And it's, these random instances where they come together to make a very, very cool water effect. I mean, it looks very,
Yeah.
very awesome. Yeah.
So now we can start adding it back into the illustration. So right now it's looking a bit rough, I admit. So I'm going to bring back my reference layer and just copy and paste it in here, just so that I can use a fill effect and match the color, because I've never downloaded any of those extensions that allow you
Mm-hmm.
to like have a color palette. So I'm just still doing it the old way. So that's looking better. Um, Again, you could leave it like this. Actually, it's really faded and desaturated in here. So maybe I should just show you the result in the main composition. Um, I always get asked this question. It's just that I draw everything very flat and desaturated, and I do all of the adjustments layer inside of After Effects when I've animated everything, just to make sure that it's cohesive. So that's with and without all of the adjustments. So yeah, right now it looks like this. It's pretty nice. But I think I want to add some reflections, like in here. Um, I've used a plugin that's not free for this, so I want to make this as accessible as possible, so we're not going to use it. Um, so the way I make things glow, I think you may have noticed that I love adding glow everywhere in my
Yeah, I noticed that
illustrations.
in your work. It's like that. It
Yeah,
reminds me of like these '70s nostalgic like fantasy movies.
I love it. I love them. So yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the way I do this is with my favorite effect, fractal noise.
Ah, yes, the fractal noise.
Yeah,
Well, you
yeah.
do the. We do
I
have a
mean,
question. Someone's asking, what do you have under the hood on your PC? RAM, GPU. I think your video card it was a 2070, right? GeForce 2070. And then how much
I
RAM are you
think so.
rocking? Yeah,
64
64.
gigabytes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's pretty beefy. It's why I mean her machine's rendering pretty well. As we can see,
Mhm.
because the video card does a lot, and obviously the RAM does too. And you
Yeah.
gotta pair it with a good processor as well. So, do you know what processor you have off the top of your mind?
I don't remember. I
Okay.
it was like a custom build, but it
Mm-hmm.
was 5 years ago, so
Okay. Well, it
I
still
don't
holds up. I
remember.
mean, technology days, 5 years, a little bit ago, but I mean, it's
Yeah,
still chucking along pretty dang good.
exactly. Um, so I've created a solid for the fractal noise, and I'm going to use one of my animation presets for this. If you don't use animation presets, you should.
Mm-hmm.
It's my opinion. I've reset my preferences, but it's still there. So
Okay.
just imagine I have like a bunch of things on this tab. So if people in the chat have never used animation presets, um, it's like life-saving. Usually well, especially if you animate the same things over and over again, or if you have like a style and you use the same things. Once you've animated something, so let's say you have some keyframes and parameters on an effect, you can just select it, go to animation and save animation preset. And then you can find it in your list, and then you save time and money.
Time and money. Money is time. We do have
Exactly.
Daniela's asking the name of the plugin that you referenced earlier. I think the one that wasn't free. Do you know the name of it? They just want to know for reference.
It's from Red Giant.
Hmm.
It's their stylize set, I think. The one where there is like glimmer and star glow and things like that. So yeah, it's a bit on the expensive side. So for people
Yeah,
that are starting out,
oh yeah,
yeah,
I've used Red Giant before. I used to work for a studio and they would include it in the license, which was helpful. So yeah, a little bit expensive, but once you start doing it and it makes sense for your studio or production company, then I think it can be worth the money based on what you're using it for.
absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, that's my preset. It's a fractal noise on a loop. It's a bit on the softer side, and I'm going to use this as a Luma mat for a copy of my water pre-composition. So if I set it like this and then on Luma, so now this copy is only showing up in the brightest areas of the fractal noise. So I've essentially created some reflective areas. And then if you add some glow to that, then it looks like the surface of the water is sort of glimmering in the sun, right?
I see. Hmm.
So yeah, animated, it looks like this. So the water is moving and then the fractal noise is also moving. So it just creates a nice little movement.
Very cool.
So I'll just, thank you, pre-compose that and rename it. No one is going to catch me today not naming a layer.
Nope. You caught yourself at the beginning. You're like, wait a second.
No, that's not
I haven't
me.
renamed it. That's not me. What am I doing here? So yes.
Um, so if you have just the After Effects bare bone software, no plugins, you can absolutely do that with the basic glow effect. You just kind of need to raise the radius, then you can set it on the colors that you want, and then it's going to create some reflections on your water. One plugin that I do recommend is Deep Glow. So you can find it on, I never know how to say it in English, AE Scripts. Is that it?
AE scripts. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
AE scripts. Yeah,
Okay.
nailed it.
Yes. So I usually just lower the radius of the glow a bit and the exposure as well. And what I like to do is add some tint, so some color to the glow. And I think I'll go with some sort of muted green. If I go back to my main composition, if it wants to load, yeah, I have some right here, so I'm going to try to match that. Um, yeah, okay, looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's given.
Uh,
I'm already seeing the classic Manon look. With the
yeah,
muted colors and those kind of like the filmy look. It looks good. And we got a
thank you.
couple of people joining us in the chat. I see Alvin. I see Anda. They're all saying hello, Manon. Someone saying this looks
Hello.
insane with a little heart emojis. Thank you all for joining us. Again, we're live with Manon. She is showing us how to create a cool water effect and her stylistic look. And we got about maybe 25 more minutes left. So, any questions, comments,
Perfect.
concerns? Keeping an eye on it, but we're letting spotlight shine on this project. So, If we have time for some Q&A, I'll get into some other questions. Berenice, I saw your question. I think we have some time at the end of the stream. I'll get to it just because I think that's kind of a longer question than just a quick one.
Okay, I think we'll have some time. I'm honestly almost done, so then we can like go around the project and check some other things out if we need to. So yeah, that's the water. So if I go back in here, it's looking like this. I think it looks pretty nice with the red sky. And so remember the corner pin effect? That's what gives it the perspective, right? So
yeah,
one
there it is.
last
Okay,
effect.
so there it is, kind of flat, and it was just a corner pin effect. It kind of distorted the view. And then can you show us how you did that real quick? Did you just match the corner pins to the horizon? Is that kind of what you did?
So I have the water composition is a bit larger because you need more
so it's
surface.
the red frame, right? That's the water composition. Yeah, it is. Okay.
Absolutely. So it's just like maybe 3 times the size. I don't know. I'm not good at math. And the corner pin. So this pin corresponds to this corner, this one to this one, and I brought them down to the horizon, and then because things are bigger when they're closer to you, I brought these two out to create some sort of a cone, right?
Yeah, okay. And that does kind of match with the natural perspective then, so nice. Yeah. Good call out.
Yeah.
So the closer they are, the further, and then the more far apart, the more closer they are to the foreground.
Yeah. I mean, I could have just made it 3D and just like rotated it, I guess. But I think it takes longer to load for some reason, like 3D layers on my computer at least.
Yeah, they're a little more processor heavy.
Yeah. So that usually works out better for me. So one last thing is a wave warp effect, also one of my favorite effects. It just creates a wave on the layer, and I've added this one at the end on top of everything and on top of the corner pin because I wanted to match the perspective. Whereas if I had it before, it would look weird. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it would have. So I usually lower the height and raise the width. So let me show you. Like this is really tiny, right? And so I want it to look like it matches with the hand. I do a lot of things because they feel right, honestly. And
yeah,
this
I mean, that's
feels
what
right.
creativity is, right? I mean, you're kind of going with your gut, right? And that's can't really explain it, but that's just what works for you, and that's gotta trust your gut.
Exactly.
Looks good.
And my gut is also telling me to slow down the speed because again, I'm someone that likes things to be slow and nice and steady. So I'll lower the speed to half. And yeah, so now it looks like this. So if I just show you this one bit, it's looking pretty good. I had already animated a little something around the finger. So it's just like a shape layer, a circle.
I was going to ask you, I imagine you masked that out to get that effect where it's going up on the layer, right?
Yeah, so I have one layer for the reflection and one layer for the hand. And the reflection, it's just like a circle with a wave warp and some piece of the hand. And I've distorted it with wave warp and a mask, I think. I don't know. I don't remember.
So that is the actual hand that you just distorted with all the effects, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it was like a mask and some fractal noise used as a doom mat, something like this.
Got
I
it.
think.
Our favorite effect, fractal noise.
Yeah.
It's got so many use cases. It's such a funny effect. It's just you could do so much.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So if I go back to the main composition now, it's looking pretty good because I've added a bunch of effects on top.
Hmm.
So I have some grain and like levels and a lot of things, honestly. But if I load a preview, maybe it's going to be a bit heavy. I have the
Yeah.
render right here, so maybe I can just show you the render full screen.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the water.
Very cool. So just a quick time check. We do have about 15 minutes left, so we got a little bit of time to kill. Is there anything else that you wanted to just show us, or maybe we can just kind of deconstruct some of the things that the chat might be interested in,
Absolutely.
or would you? Okay, so chat, let us know if there's anything else you want to see within this cool composition, or maybe something you want to learn. I have a question that I'm curious to know, and then I'll ask another question that was earlier in the chat. So, Berenice, if you're still with us, I'll go ahead and ask your question here in a second. But how did you get, so with the hand, it looks like you kind of have a glow effect,
Mhm.
no, on the final composition.
Uh, Let me
So the one
see.
where it was everything kind of playing.
Um, right here. Yes.
Uh, yeah, how did you get the kind of glowing effect at the fingertips on the hand? I think that's a very cool effect.
Right here.
It's yeah, kind of like the orange red like rim lighting that you
Uh,
have going. What effect was it to get that?
that was just me drawing on the iPad, actually.
Okay. That was actually gonna be
Uh,
another question. Are you drawing these before you bring them into After Effects on an iPad? So they're digital illustrations?
yes.
Okay.
I draw on the iPad and then I import my file into Photoshop on the computer
Oh,
just to
okay.
do some uh, cleaning up, merging layers that don't need to be animated, and just like naming everything.
Gotta name it. Okay, so it looks like the
Exactly.
lighting was already there, and then the effects you probably did just kind of blew up that lighting that was already baked in to the
Yes,
illustration, right? Okay, and I see what. Okay.
because yeah, I have an adjustment layer and I have a VHS effect that's by Red
Is that
Giant.
a Red Giant? I've used that effect before. Yeah, yeah. I knew I
Yeah,
recognized it. I had to make a 70s style disco video for this DJ, and that effect saved the video a lot, or it did a lot of lifting.
it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
It just gives it like this really nice texture. Um, I don't like things to look too digital, I guess. So yeah, that's just my base layers, and it just adds a lot of texture and it blows out the colors.
Uh
It
huh.
sort of blurs the edges and it adds like some color to them. So yeah, I love it.
Very cool. All right, we got a couple questions. We got quite a bit of questions coming in. So, first of all, do you plan on releasing more Skillshare courses?
I've sort of moved away from the idea. Unfortunately, I had started working on a class for augmented reality, and then the software was killed. So that kind of brought me down a bit.
Yeah.
And I've been working a lot on client projects, so I don't have as much time as I did right now. But I'll definitely keep checking on student projects and answering all of your questions on Skillshare. I do it every week, so just be sure that I'm still there. Absolutely.
Cool. I see you're on the smoke, the volcano smoke. This is actually a good segue to the next question. So, two questions. Maybe you can answer the second one while we're working on this one. Daniela wants to know, I would love to see how the volcano smoke effect was done. And then Berenice is asking, the color palette you use is beautiful. Where do you draw inspiration from when selecting colors for your animations?
Okay, I'll just answer the color question first.
Yeah, I
Honestly, if
figured we
you
could do
look,
that one first and then get into the smoke second.
yeah, if you look in my work, you will pretty quickly find that it just recycles the same like 6 to 8 colors. So I just found one that worked well together. So like this orange, the pink, the light green, this sort of aqua color. And then I just sort of mix and match, honestly. I really like the look of like old TV and old VHS, so I definitely draw inspiration from this. Um,
Oh, that's so
yeah, I
cool.
like
I love that.
shiny colors, basically. I
Hmm.
guess that's the answer. Yeah, I hope that sort of answers the question, but it's honestly just like a 8 colors color palette that I just move around.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. So for the smoke is a beast and one I'm not too proud to show, so bear with me.
Okay. No worries. We got about 10 minutes, so we got plenty of
Okay,
time.
all right. So this monstrosity, you can see that I did
There's so
name
many
my
layers.
layers.
Yeah, you did. Oh my God, you did name base one, base two, base three.
Yeah, I even color
Yeah.
coded them, so so okay, we have a base right here. How can I show this effectively? So the
You can
base
you can
is,
isolate them. There you go. Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't working. I think it was my mouse. So the base is just a bunch of circles, and there is an expression, a wiggle expression on the position and the scale. So it just
Whoa.
creates
Okay.
this mass.
Okay.
Expressions. I love
That's a bunch of
expressions.
circles grouped together, right? So that's why there's so many layers because a bunch of circles.
Yeah,
Okay.
like this. So that's just
There it is. Okay.
sorry, the base. So it's the part that's right at the top of the volcano. So I needed it to be pretty static. And then then we have a bunch of circles. Okay, how will I explain this? Okay, so the base the base is a circle and it's going along a path. So if I remove the effects, it's just a circle, it grows, it shrinks, and it moves around on a path, right? Like this. And
Okay.
then And then there is some echo effect. So it creates some copies, and then there's a roughen edges effect, and it just makes them a bit more organic, and it like wiggles the edges of the circles, so it looks more like something you would find in nature, I guess.
Okay. So
And
this
then
is
I,
one layer with all the circles, right?
yes,
You didn't bring it.
just
Okay.
one.
So that's what the echo effect is doing. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
The echo just creates the copies.
Right.
And then I duplicated it and I switched the parameters on the echo. So I switched the echo time and the number of copies. And that just sort of created this trailing effect. And with the roughen edges, it looks a lot better because it doesn't just look like a bunch of circles. It looks more like a mass, I guess. Okay, so that's the base. And then I did that a bunch of times. So you have some other circles. Same thing, it's just one circle traveling around like along a path with some echo and roughen edges. Then another set. And I also switched around like the different positions on their path and the speed at which they're traveling. And then to tie it all together, there is there is this line. I've added like a wave on the path, like here. I don't know where it is. Yeah, on the stroke, I added a taper and a wave. and I animated that, and that just allows me to fill in the gaps in between the
I
circles.
see. Mm-hmm.
Um, so without the line, it looks a bit like more skinny, and sometimes it just like separates. So I just added the line to make it more like a general shape. Then, then we
I love
have an
this.
adjustment layer.
Yeah.
The adjustment layer, it's a simple choker. So a choker effect, it either expands the bounds of the shape on the layer or in the composition, like this. I don't know if it's very subtle. Um, so that's with a negative value. It's going to expand the edges. Like if I raise it more, it's going to look like this. Um, and then I did another one with a positive value, and this one just kind of shrinks everything together, so it makes it even more cohesive, like a blob almost, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, some roughen edges to make the edges kind of wiggle. Just another line to be sure, and some turbulent displace. So that's the smoke.
Okay.
Um, and then I added like some shading.
Okay, so you pre-comped it, and then you're starting to give it.
Yeah.
Okay, the shading. I see. And then is that something you drew, and then brought it
So
in as a layer?
so the shading, the highlights, it's the same principle as the smoke itself, just a lighter color, but it's
Oh, so you did
still
this
circles.
again. Look at you. Wow, a
Yeah,
lot went
yeah.
into the smoke.
Yeah, kind of. And then for the red, so the red was just a PSD layer, and I used a fractal noise. Okay, like this. So this is my layer, and I used a fractal noise just like I did for the glow to
As a
make it sort
mat.
of shine
Oh,
like this,
yeah.
right? And some turbulent displace again to make it sort of move around as if the flames from the volcano were reflecting on the smoke,
Uh-huh.
right? Um, and then that gives us this.
Look at that. So cool. Wow. Yeah, that was, thanks for breaking that down for us. It looks like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's going to look simple, but you just don't know all the work that goes into that tiny little animation. And that's one of multiple animations in that grid layout you had. So,
Yeah,
oh, I love it. All the work that goes into to make something very cool.
thank you.
Yeah, I think that's what came
It's
out great.
Thank
It's
you.
good.
It
Yeah.
it's funny because some people just like think of a concept for an illustration, and then they think about how it's going to look or if they're going to
Mhm.
animate it. And I usually go the other way around. Like I think, oh, I want to animate some smoke today, or I want to animate some flames, and then I just create something around it.
Yeah, so
Um,
that actually leads. So we can wrap it up with this question because we only have about a
mhm.
minute and a half left. But I do want to get back to the question Berenice asked pretty
Yeah.
early in the show. Said, I would like to know the general creative process for developing animations and illustrations. What does that look like? And I think you kind of touched up on that. So it sounded like you wanted to animate smoke, and then maybe the rest of this came around that, or what would you
Um,
say?
well, I thought of this project for the live, so I knew there was going to be some water in there, and I figured I want to have some contrasting elements. And I've been wanting to animate a volcano for a while, so I was like, okay, some smoke would be cool, and I really wanted to up my game with smoke. I've done a lot of it, but I wanted to challenge myself with like the highlights and the red light and everything. So then I thought, well, why not have some flames? So maybe like there's a house that's on fire because of the volcano, and I don't know, like an electric storm or something. So it's kind of like an apocalypse, I guess. Just so that really contrasts with the water, because the water one is very peaceful and very calm, and then it's just like sort of the end of the world around it. So the concept usually comes at the end for me.
Interesting. Very cool. Cool. That actually kind of ticks us when we need to wrap up. So Manon, thank you so much for showing us this. This was
Thank you.
very, very cool. I really, personally thoroughly enjoyed seeing how you create this. And again, you have a look that's just, I feel like I can look at something and be like, yep, that's her work. So it works. It works very, very awesome. And thank you for showing us how to break it down. So fun
Thank
stuff.
you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure. Don't go anywhere because we do have the emotion spotlight coming up next with Jenny Davis. So stick around for that. And as always, we are live every week. So go ahead and hit that subscribe channel on Adobe Live YouTube. Again, thank you all for joining and engaging with us, asking the questions, making the comments. You had tons of love on the chat. Dixie saying, thank you so much. We'll attempt some of these. Anna saying, thank you. This was amazing. Danielle, thank you. This was amazing. Yeah, so a lot of fans, a lot of praise. So great having you on the show. That was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Sounds good. All right, everybody, stick around. Don't go anywhere. We have more Adobe Live coming up in about 3 minutes, so we will see you then. Bye.
Bye.